Let me.
Thank you for checking in on me. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Okay. Budget hearing, millage rate hearing,
Yeah.
public input. Good evening, everyone. We are here for our third and final hearing on the millage rate, but before we do that, we will have our budget hearing as well. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Dr. Hooker, would you like to take attendance?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Heidi Hensley.
Here.
Ms. Mary P. Bagby. Here. Ms. Linda Davis.
Here.
Dr. Patricia Yeager.
Here.
Mr. Tim Denson.
Here.
Dr. Mumby Anderson.
Here.
Dr. Lakeisha Gant. Ms. Nicole Hull. And Mr. Mark Evans.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum, so we will proceed with the agenda as presented. Let's move to item 3, to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Okay, move made by Ms. Hensley and seconded by Mr. Evans. All in favor of adopting the agenda as presented, raise your hand high and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. And now we are at item 4 for the FY26 budget hearing.
Mr. Griner.
Griner.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Good to have you back. Good evening. I'm going to just kind of go through some quick highlights as we've done in the previous 2 budget hearings, and I'm going to turn it over to some of our departments to kind of go over their operating budgets, comparison from FY25 to FY26. So I'm just going to, again, review updates to the general fund budget. So our tax digest did increase. The final increase was 8.66%. I think when we started this process, we were at 6.5%. So having that additional 2% allowed us to kind of relook at the budget. We are presenting a balanced budget this year for the general fund. It allowed us to kind of look at some stuff Dr. Hooker, and she's going to speak about a little bit later, some security positions we wanted to add in. And so we talked about 3 certified officers at an estimated cost of $300,000, 14 non-certified or unarmed officers at an estimated cost of $840,000. Those 14 would be at each elementary school. Right now we have 2 certified officers who kind of patrol our elementary schools. And I'm gonna let, as I mentioned, Dr. Hooker is going to go into a little bit more detail about that later in the hearing. We did take deferred maintenance out originally. We really wanted to add it back in, so we added $1 million. We feel like we've got our HVAC issues kind of under control. I know when I started back with the district in FY24, we had, quite a few issues we were trying to tackle with our HVAC systems. Right now, I think our biggest challenge, and you've heard Dr. Askew and Mr. Gilbert mention this, is our roof situation. So we've got roofs that we feel like we're going to have to repair, possibly replace, which gets into that's some big dollars when you start talking about replacing. So I think we're going to look at all aspects there. We did take the recommendation of the Sustainability Committee. We were able to add, we're recommending adding a sustainability coordinator. So we looked at other districts around us, kind of came up with an estimated cost of $133,000. We have got kind of I know Ms. Davis has asked this question about a job description. Dr. Askew has reached out to some other districts, so we're kind of in that process. And I know Mr. Schwartz kind of went through the thought process on that at the last hearing as far as that job description. So we're kind of waiting till the position got approved, and then we would kind of fine tune the job description. Of course, bring that before y'all as a board as well, if the position is approved. So the increase allowed us to make these additions, which we feel cover safety, maintenance, and then sustainability, which are 3 key areas in our opinion. Again, just a reminder, the best practice is 3 to 6 months of reserves. With this budget, even with it balanced, we still have like 2.59. We feel comfortable with that. We're estimating around $55 million. Just to point out that 3 months would be about $64 million, however. State of Georgia, for comparison, at the end of FY24 had 4.7 months of reserves. On average, Georgia school districts 3.8, and it varies across the state as far as reserve percentages. I won't go over these again, but this is kind of how we came to the conclusion. Trying to balance the budget this year and not go into reserves. There's a lot of items to consider. Federal funding, the Promise School Scholarship Fund that we've talked about a lot in our meetings. And then, you know, the potential for increased prices. We're kind of, I think Mr. Gilbert could tell you on the construction side, we're starting to see some of those prices start to tick up a little bit. So I think throughout the district, we're going to see increased prices. So I think those were the highlights. So our total budget is almost $255 million, about a $13 million increase over last year. I say that in the 11.8 of that is salary and benefits. Roughly, if you take the health insurance and the TRS change of $8.5 million, those are all state mandates that we have no control over. So again, the total budget's the salary and benefits about $3.3 million, and a lot of that is the certified and non-certified positions that I've already talked about in the sustainability coordinator. So this is one of my favorite slides because it's balanced this year. So when you look at the FY26 budget summary, you can see we have revenues over expenditures at zero, so we have a balanced budget at this point. And I'm going to, at this time, turn it over to Dr. Scott, who's going to talk about academics and student supports. So thank y'all. And then I will come back at the end to answer any questions y'all have and to do kind of a timeline update. So, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So I will give you an overview of the budget for academics and student supports for 2025-26. So when in comparison to the FY25 budget of 8.5 million, our FY26 budget for the academics portion of our academics and student supports division is 8.8 million. So that is an increase of about 261,000. And when we look at that, then this is a breakdown of what we were able to reduce versus what we did have to increase. So for reductions, we did reduce our curriculum resource coaching. That would be our resource professional developers coming in and actually working with our schools. Then we have decreased the number of, or the amount of times, as well as the frequency with which they are coming to actually support, because we do have our content coordinators who are well-versed and skilled in being able to support our schools when it comes to the implementation of our standards. When we look at the actual curriculum resource professional developers, they are coming in to talk about how to use their resource. We've used them now for at least 2 years for some resources, more than that for others. And so making sure that we are moving our focus to standards-based instruction, with those resources being a support to delivering standards-based instruction, which means that our content coordinators are able to support in that vein. We've also reduced our outside consulting contracts to be able to really think about where are they most needed when we're thinking about some of our newest staff members. But if outside contracts for consulting are not necessary any longer, then we're looking to reduce that. Also, our staff conference attendance, focusing more on our in-state conferences versus our out-of-state. Out-of-state costs a little bit more because you also have to pay for travel, as well as limiting to actually identify those that are the most beneficial for the jobs that individuals are doing. And so we've asked that that be reduced to no more than one that is out of state, and that we focus more on in-state, as well as those that offer a virtual option for conferences. And finally, when we're looking at our summer curriculum work, decreasing the amount that's having to be done during the summer, because we did bring back our content collaboratives, which gives our content coordinators as well as our instructional coaches an opportunity to work collaboratively throughout the year to really address any areas where we need to make adjustments to our curriculum portal. And that's the bulk of the work that's done during the summer, are those adjustments to the curriculum portal based upon teacher feedback. And so rather than waiting until the summer to do that, they will do that throughout the year as a part of their content collaboratives. The additions that we did have to make involve the consumables for our curriculum resources that was previously covered through our ESSER funding. And when we look at the amount that was previously covered, it was over $600,000 that we had to absorb within the general fund for all of our consumables. We also are adding band uniforms this year for our high schools. It's been quite a while since they've gotten new band uniforms. So that is in the amount of just over $125,000 for both schools combined to get new band uniforms. And then also refurbishing our science kits and materials for our kindergarten through 8th grade. They do not have a resource, but they do have science kits so that students are able to explore and experiment over scientific phenomenon. And so with that, there are a lot of consumable pieces that come with that. And so we're on a 3-year cycle of replenishing and refurbishing those science kits. And so this coming year will be a year to refurbish those. When we're looking at student supports, the budget for student supports last year was $946,000. For this coming year, we are just a little over $800,000. So that's a decrease of a little over $100,000. The areas where we were able to make some reductions, again, when we're thinking about the consulting contracts, then reducing those, but then also, again, the staff conference attendance. We did have to add add a line item for the Leader in Me materials that was previously covered through ESSER funding for our schools that are not a part of the grant. And so there were some schools that were already doing Leader in Me, so they were not eligible for the grant that's covering most of our schools. But for those schools, we did need to move that into general fund from ESSER. So that is all for academics and student supports. So I am also going to share with you for HR on behalf of Dan Swartz. Are there any questions around academics and student supports, though, before I start with human resources?
Just gratitude. Nice job.
Okay.
I have one quick question. When you say band uniforms, does that include the drill team and flag corps? So is it the full band?
No, it was just for the band. So
Okay.
not the auxiliaries that go along with the band.
Okay. Why aren't the auxiliary folks included in that?
So their uniforms are typically done through that actual auxiliary. When it comes to the actual band uniforms, that's what has not been refurbished.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Redone. All right, so for human resources, their FY25 budget was just a little over $500,000. They have increased by about $50,000 for the FY26 budget with $567,000. And really and truly, the bulk of this comes from the addition of the special education residency-based teacher apprenticeship program, which costs $248,000. And it started last year, so it was approved last year, but will continue into the FY26 year. They did make some reductions within their department through their consulting services as well. Also looking at recruitment practices. We know that there are a lot of recruitment practices that are done through social media now, but then also when we're looking at our homegrown initiatives for recruiting and looking at things such as our residency programs, then they are reducing the number of trips taken for career fairs. In fact, a lot of places are going more towards the online career fairs. When we're looking at professional learning in human resources, again, they're looking at reducing their out-of-state travel for their staff members to attend professional learning and focusing more on the in-state opportunities offered for human resources. They did want to provide just an update on the special education residency program. Cohort 1 did begin in January with 2 participants finishing their first semester of courses, and they are doing that while they're continuing their work as paraprofessionals in our district. They provided a lot of great feedback, a lot of positive feedback. They seem to truly be enjoying the program and are able to apply a lot of what they are learning to their work in the schools. The work is being done now to identify participants for Cohort 2, which will launch in the fall of 2025. They had over 50 applicants. They have identified 11 to go to the final round of interviews, and 9 of those 11 are current CCSD employees, one of whom one of the 11 is actually one of our 2025 graduates who was a part of the Teaching as a Profession pathway. So she completed the requirements and has acceptance into our SPED residency program. So we are very excited about that and happy to welcome her. So with that being said, the budget does address the priorities that they've set, which are recruitment, onboarding, staff support, and development. So any questions that I can possibly answer or take back to Mr. Swartz?
Any questions? So this would be for both the academic affairs and HR presentations? Okay, looks like we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, now we'll have Mr. Gilbert filling in for Dr. Askew for operations.
Good evening. There's not a slide for the overall budget for the total budget for the operations department, but in fiscal year 2025, there were 6 departments that make up the budget: district services, custodial, plant services, transportation, safety, energy, and technology. The fiscal year 25 budget was $14,354,584, and in 2026, we had a 2% decrease, with the fiscal year 26 proposed budget of $14,046,777. So district services was actually able to, out of those 6 departments, 3 of them were increases and 3 of them were decreases. District service was able to decrease their budget approximately 67% by reduction of additional furniture purchases and such that typically they make, so that was able to do a reduction there. For custodial department, they had an increase of 1% to $678,652, and that's primarily due to the larger Clark Middle School, and additional supplies and equipment is needed for the increased size of the buildings and for job-related training for the staff. So they did have an increase. Plant services, their budget was decreased by approximately 3%. Due to some of the planning for the HVAC costs and things like that that we're able to incorporate with SPLOST money, as well as not purchasing new vehicles that weren't, that they've caught up kind of on their vehicle purchase, so they're able to save a little money there. Next is transportation, had a 16% increase, and that was primarily due to increased field trips, purchase of new routing software, repair of some buses, and purchase of replacement batteries for the EV buses. And I'm happy to say that the charging station has been installed for the EV buses, so they've got to get some training on it, and we should be good to go and rolling out and being able to monitor those and get some good data back for those buses. Next one is safety and energy. They had an 18% decrease in their budget, and again, that was, they were actually able to work with some of the fire alarm system replacements, with some of the safety grants. They were able to fund those and save some funds at that point. And last one is technology, which had a 4% increase, and that was primarily due to the expansion of our wireless network and the increased size of some of our facilities, with Clark Middle coming on board, as well as the CCSD Learning Center. Any questions?
Yes,
Sorry, Ms. Davis.
thank you. So can you tell me kind of what we're going to be doing with those 2 electronic buses? Will they do routes? Are they kind of slated for special events or?
Ms. Davis, do you mind speaking a little bit more into the mic?
Yes, is that better?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Can you tell me the plans for the EV buses, how they're going to be used?
Yeah, I think initially they're going to roll them out on some shorter routes, just to kind of get used to the usage and see how the charging and recharging goes, and kind of see, what's going to happen with them, and then, make best use, of what the range is for the buses, and then, how long it takes to actually recharge and then be able to use them the next day. So I think they've got some ideas on how to use them, but really until you kind of get in it and drive it and see how, based on the, the hills and things like that, how it's going to drain the battery and how long it's going to last. So we should get some good, be able to use it kind of as an experiment this summer, doing some things, doing some routes, and then come fall, we'll have a better understanding on a better way to utilize those buses on our routes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Gilbert. So I think that,
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be discussing with us about the safety and security concerns for the school year of 25-26. I had an opportunity to collaborate with Chief Reed at in the fall of 2024. We were hiding across the state with the incident that happened at Appalachia High School, and we had meetings with the public concerning those. We had several parents come to the board meeting concerned about our elementary schools not having uniform or ununiformed officers at our schools. So we took that into consideration, and what we're proposing for this budget is that currently we have 14 armed officers at our schools and 13 unarmed officers. The proposed budget is to offer 3 additional armed officers and 14 additional unarmed officers, and those unarmed officers would be placed at all of our elementary schools, which would give us a total of 27 unarmed officers and 17 armed officers. And I think by putting this in place, we are addressing the needs that the public has asked us to do. And if you look across the state, everyone is grappling with this, but we want to ensure that all of our students are safe. So that's the proposed budget for our safety and security.
okay, are there questions about that? That's a no. All right. Are there other presentations for,
Now we go to.
now we're moving to the millage rate hearing?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now we are moving to agenda item 5, the millage rate hearing. Mr. Greiner.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna let Lisa or Ms. Palmer pull. No, you're good. You're good. All right, just a couple slides on the millage rate. Again, keeping in mind at the May 8th board meeting, the tentative millage rate was set at 18.8 mils. And that's tentative until, we have proposed approval tomorrow night at the same millage rate. This would leave the millage rate the same as FY25 in the last several years. Again, reassessment of properties produced a tax increase of 6.46%. So you may say, how do we get to the 8.66%? The other 2.2% is new construction during that tax assessment period. So that's any new growth in the digest. The 6.46% addresses any properties that were already in the digest that just got reassessed by the tax assessor. In order to have no increase, and that's considered a tax increase even though we're not raising the millage rate, because some people's property values may have went up, some may have stayed the same, so it's just kind of, but by law that's considered an increase. To have no increase, the millage rate would have to be 17.659 mils. There's a rollback calculation that is actually attached on Assembly that kind of goes through that if anybody ever wants to have fun and try to figure that one out. No, it's pretty straightforward. It takes into the reassessment and says that to get the same amount of taxes we had last year, we would have to have, the millage rate would be 17.659%. So, or mils, I'm sorry, not percent. Let's see, let me go back. Again, I've already talked about some owners will see an increase, some may not. So this is the same slide we had in the budget hearings. Growth of 8.66, I talked through. Growth last year was 9.31%, so a slight decrease this year. Again, the 2.5% we pay for ACC to collect our ACC Gov to collect our taxes, tax commissioner. 1.2 million in delinquent payments. That's pretty consistent with history. We try to base that on prior history. And then, so the estimated net amount of property taxes in the general fund budget is 146.5 million. Couple graphs that the 1 mil is now worth a little over 8 million with the current digest. And again, the millage rate has been the same for the last 4 years when it was reduced back in 22 from 20 to 18, or 23, 18.8, and it's been consistent the last 4 years. And then this is just the timeline. We have run all the The millage rate has specific guidelines on how you have to run the ads. Those have all been run in the paper, conferred with the tax commissioner. Those have all been run properly. We had to run the 5-year tax digest. That's been run. Required by law to have 3 hearings. We've had those 3 hearings. We do 3 budget hearings in conjunction with that. State law only requires you to do 2 budget hearings. We've always felt it's prudent to have 3 and 3, just do them together. So this is our 3rd hearing, as Dr. Anderson mentioned. The proposal has been advertised to approve the final budget and millage rate tomorrow night at the board meeting. So, and I'll be happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
Okay, do we have any questions from the board? Ms. Bagby?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Griner, you stated earlier, I can't recall exactly what you said the total budget was for the year, but you said it was an increase of 13 million.
That is correct.
Okay, could you tell me what you said about the total budget?
It's, the total is close to 200. Lisa, can you pull? That's 255 million. 11.8 of that is in salary and benefits. And most of that is related to the health insurance and TRS increases. Sorry, I can do it now. Let me get back to that slide. Maybe.
To add to Ms. Bagby's questions, I was actually going to suggest that you include a bullet item of that $13 million increase and the fact that it is coming largely out of the increase in salary in benefits.
Yes, ma'am.
To the slides, because that was not in the slides, and I think that that's an important point to include for public record.
Right. I can definitely, it's kind of on this, but it's not spelled out. I mean, this shows a comparison which shows you have salary and benefits and operating. So it has the 11.8 there, but I can add a bullet before we.
Yeah.
I'll be glad to. And then to me, the next slide is kind of relevant. It's 8.5 of that is kind of out of our control. So, and then we included a step increase if applicable for all employees. The governor, keep in mind, did not do an increase this year for certified or classified. The only thing the governor included in the budget this year was the custodial supplement. And we've got that in there at about $150,000 last year. I think it's $1,000, yes, $1,000, and roughly we have about 150 custodial staff. So that's kind of how we calculate that. It doesn't always come out exactly to 150, but it's close to it. So yeah, that's important to note. The governor this year did not include any increases. So we're doing a step increase, which essentially is if you're eligible, which means you have it at the end of the salary scale, or some of our salary steps actually you step, but there's no increase associated with that on certain ones. But if you do get an increase, it's kind of the equivalent to what a COLA or cost of living adjustment would be. So it's that 2.5%. And last year we showed the chart with what we've done over the last 4 or 5 years, and y'all have been very gracious in the budget the last 4 or 5 years and allowed us to, match what the governor's done with the certified. Again, the governor doesn't really address classified because it's not funded at the state level, so that's why. But we've been able to match that consistently. So.
Thank you, Mr. Greiner.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Further questions? Ms. Davis, your light is on. You have a question?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Shoot.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
I heard it for the first time. All right, so the governor did not give the stipend that he normally does for teachers during the budget. Does it always come during the budget cycle, or does he announce that later?
Any changes to the state salary scale have always been done through the budget process. During the years where the state had a lot of the federal ARPA funding, he was doing like a retention supplement stipend.
Right.
We did not have one at FY25. There's not one proposed for FY26. Those are kind of the surprises. I really don't see with the stuff they put in the budget this year, the focus has been on safety more so, rightly so. I don't foresee that happening again this year. And I do think the state is starting to kind of use their reserves a little bit to fund some initiatives like safety. And that is always at his discretion. He's typically done those in like December, January.
That's what I was thinking.
So,
Okay, so then we're looking at cost of living for any kind of increase for
Right.
anybody.
right. And if the
And
governor does
everybody
something-
gets that typically, right?
Right. Well, majority. Again, a couple of years ago, y'all did a longevity supplement. I do think that is something that Mr. Schwartz and I have talked about. not this budget year, but down the road, we want to look at the salary scales a little closer too, because, as I mentioned, you may step, but there may not be an increase. So, that is something we're going to look at over the next fiscal year and hopefully bring that back to you in FY '27. So, I'm not saying we'll have a recommendation to do that. I think we just had a brief conversation the other day about something I think he wants to look at as well. So,
Okay.
y'all did do the longevity supplement, I think it was 2-3 years ago,
Right?
where we gave almost like a stipend for those people who were at the end of the scale. So, and I will say every district that I've been in, their salary scales are set the way we are. There's always that year you step where there's no increase, and there's an end point as well. So we're not doing anything different than other districts do. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Griner before we let him step away? Okay. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank y'all so much. Appreciate it.
All right. So now we are at the portion of the agenda for public input. Ms. Palmer, you did not give me a sign-in sheet. Okay. Okay, okay. We have another attendee in the far, oh, no, okay, oh, never mind, okay. Wow, this is shocking. So I'm just kind of trying to make sure, because this is not typical for other years. I do want to highlight a couple of points for the public. We did have 3 hearings. We're only mandated to have 2, but we had an additional one. One of the ones that we had, we lost our quorum halfway through the meeting. I was not here, but we lost our quorum, but there was no public participation. So for that particular meeting, we wouldn't have been required to have a quorum because there was no public participation. So at this point, we have had a quorum for at least 2 of the 3 meetings, and we have had no public participation at any of the meetings. So we have pretty much, met the state regulations and standards for the millage rate hearings at this point. So at tomorrow night's meeting, we will have a vote on the budget and the millage rate, and we'll be good to go. Are there going to be any surprises tomorrow? Should we have any follow-up conversations before we get to tomorrow's budget approval? I just don't want surprises, and I've been absent for a little while, so I didn't get to participate in so we're good? Okay. All right, so with that, I think, unless Dr. Hooker, you've got anything else, I think we can adjourn.
Nope, I have no.
Awesome. All right, so we are adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, we need a motion. Uh-oh. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.